Hi, my name's Alexandra Cain. I'm a freelance finance journalist and the host of the Buy That Business podcast. Each episode, we interview expert business brokers about everything you need to know about buying and selling businesses. This episode, I'm joined by Matt.Putna, who's an expert at buying and selling hospitality businesses. It's been a wild ride for the hospitality sector during COVID. Most bars and restaurants had to close and revert to takeaway during the lockdown period, but things are getting back to normal now. So let's find out how things are for the hospitality sector. Thanks so much for joining me, Matthew.
Thanks, Ali. It's great to see you.
So Matthew, take us through the COVID journey. How bad was it for the hospitality sector?
Wow. I can tell you, look, come that first week, the Prime Minister announced, close down, no business. It was like someone hit a big red button, panic stations all around, phone calls just coming in, cancel my advertising, don't do this, whatever it may have been. But it was funny, by probably mid-May, I started seeing inquiries starting to come back again, which was kind of surprising. I thought it would be maybe July, maybe late June, early July. But I started seeing inquiries, and it came down to this. Every state was a little bit different in the way they operated. Some states like WA, you couldn't go anywhere. So tourist-based segments down south were going, I want to sell my business now because we're so busy, we would normally be on holidays. Whereas you find places in Victoria were like, oh, I don't know what to do. It was, not that many inquiries coming through. But what I found was overall, CBD businesses struggled.
Yes.
Full service businesses struggled to find buyers, and takeaway and cafes still had active buyers. And because we couldn't go anywhere, regional locations were actually very popular. And so it's been a weird year. You suddenly go 1 week, you're so flat out with inquiries, and the week after it's quiet.
That's right. So I guess one of my questions is, were people picking up a bargain during that time? Was it possible to pick up a cafe for a song?
Can I say this? A good business will always be a good business.
Sure.
And will always sell. And I don't think, having gone through 2008 and all that side of things, it doesn't change. A good business will always be a good business. And I think people are becoming more resilient and thinking about the business they're looking to buy. They're not looking at, okay, let's look at that 3 months that you'll close. They're looking at perhaps the 2 years before, or what's going on right now. And so a good business will always be a good business and will always get what it deserves. And an average business will always be negotiable, and the bargain hunters will come in. Yes, there were a lot of bottom fishers coming in looking for that bargain.
Yeah.
But owners were holding their ground and saying, no, I'm not going to, take a lot less because I don't need to sell.
And I guess JobKeeper would have assisted them to do that. They weren't forced sellers.
Yeah, that's correct. And no one was sort of back to the wall. I have to get out. The banks are on my, the banks and the landlords. We had that built-in sort of protection.
Yeah.
And so honestly, out of all the business I sold, I don't think there was one that I sold that I didn't get what I thought I was going to get for it.
Great. So, so valuations held up. Have they held up still? What's the market like now?
So now what we're seeing is a lot of those businesses that were perhaps in distress before COVID are coming back, and they're still in distress.
Sure.
Those businesses that were great are still great businesses and are coming back in there. So what I've seen is perhaps an influx of people who were looking to perhaps retire in 2 or 3 years' time are now coming saying, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And they're getting it. And it's a mixed bag, but it's generally, I would say the most of the sales I've got are people who are looking to retire, and people buying are people still aspirational about buying a business.
Great. So the market's held up. What should you look for in a hospitality business if you'd like to buy one at the moment?
Okay. So I'm a bit brutal when it comes to this sort of saying this, but you've got to look at not just 1 year. You've got to divorce yourself from the emotion of buying a business. And particularly a lot of people who buy cafes and restaurants, it's a real emotional thing. But I think that people, if you're looking for a good business, go back 2 or 3 years, have a look at the business, have a look at the performance of the business, ask questions. how many hours does the owner work in the business? If the owner's working 70 hours a week, is that how you want to see your life today? If the owner's only working 25, 30 hours a week, that's probably the business you want to get.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I guess I would imagine, I'd be interested in your view on how many hospitality owners do work in the business versus on the business.
I think older owners tend to work in the business because that's how they've been educated. And younger owners, and I don't mean to differentiate, but perhaps someone at 55, 65, 70 heading in that direction tend to work in the business. People below that tend to work on their business and in their business. And so when times are hard, they know how to step in and take over the business. And I think that's a good thing. I think you've got to work on both things and grow your business. And that's how I see it.
So how do you extricate yourself from the business? If you're the one who's been, front of house or the face of the business, and you want to pull yourself back and work on the business so it is a going concern that you can sell, how do you affect that?
I think, look, when you buy a business, you should write a business plan.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I don't know how many people I've seen start brand new businesses, buy businesses, and I always say, go and see an accountant, get some advice.
Yes.
Write a small business plan. It doesn't need to be some 100-page document. It just sort of says, this is how the business is today. This is where I want to see it tomorrow, and how will I get there? It's kind of like driving from Melbourne to Cairns, We can all get in the car and follow number 1 highway, but if we plan it, we know what towns we're going to stay in, we'll have a great meal. It's the same process of buying a business. Think about that process of buying a business. If you plan ahead, then you'll make time to actually grow the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I also understand you sell news agencies. Being in the media, I've always had a soft spot for news agencies. So, in fact, my first job was with a news agency, and I absolutely loved it. What's happening in that market at the moment?
I tell you, I started working with the NLA and Barna last year.
Yes, and they're the industry associations?
I'm going to say, yes, they're the industry association. So they look after the industry, and they went to the Victorian government, for instance, and fought that where it's an essential service, and they work around the country tirelessly with other groups, Tatterstalls and people like that to make sure the industry is well represented. Well, they have been driving their business for a while. They've been trying to look at that. So if you buy any business and you do what you've always done continually, well, you're not going to be there. And I think that's one of the things about news agencies. They're evolving rapidly. The association are bringing in new things into there to make it different. So the news agency industry has done things like they've done banking licenses because the banks are pulling out of small towns.
Yes.
Working with some of the smaller banks to have a banking license there. They're looking at post offices in there nowadays. There's lots and lots of different things that are happening in news agencies, apart from going to buy a paper or going to buy a lotto ticket. So in regional areas, I found there is a lot more interest in buying news agencies now. And there's a big uptake in looking at their news agencies we have, because they've modernized themselves, because they've had to become a bit of everything to their community, and they've become very community orientated.
They're really part of the community. Most people, when they go into their local news agency, know the news agent's name, have a bit of a yarn. They might see some of their friends in there, especially in those rural and regional areas. So that's really one of the benefits of being in news agents, in my view.
Oh, definitely. Look, I live in the city, but I know my local news agency. He knows me. He asks about my children. He's been there for 15 years, and he knows the community. And I know people when I walk in there, and I go, "Oh, hi, how are you?" So they really are. It's like a coffee shop, but with papers and cards and things like that. But the news agencies have really changed. If I look at a news agency that I've got here in country Victoria, he's changed his business from what it should have been, and it's a booming business. He's really become retail orientated. He looks at the business as a retail shop. He moves things around. He puts new items in there constantly. It's not just about papers anymore. He sells scarves and hats and candles and all those things. And people who are looking at that are evolving their news agency businesses. They're great businesses to buy into. It's husband and wife. You can work your hours around that. You know they're not long hours unless you're delivering papers. And most news agencies are selling off their paper route to production companies who then do larger areas. So they're not getting up at 4:30 in the morning. They're coming in at 7 o'clock, opening up the shop and working till 5. You know, it's the hours are becoming less and less.
Yeah, well, that was actually one of my questions. What's happening with deliveries? My understanding is some of the newspapers are taking back deliveries. Is that what you're seeing?
Look, in Queensland, certainly that's what's been happening. They've been taking back deliveries. If you look at some regional areas, you know, you might go to a large town and you might find there's, say, 10 news agencies there. They've sold off to a co-op, or they've formed their own co-op who then does all the delivery for them. So they work from sort of 2 a.m. till 5 a.m. and they go home. So you're seeing a lot more of that happening. And I had someone in a regional area said, by giving up his post round, he made $200 more a year. So he's actually making money by giving it up.
Do you see business owners who go into news agencies, you know, combine a few of them? They might own 2 or 3 in you know, nearby areas.
You are starting to see a bit more of that, depending on what the size of them are. Because, you know, they're when you buy those ones where you can put managers and things in them, they're big purchases and big stock levels. But you are starting to see, I've come across a couple of conglomerates where there's 3 or 4 owners who've got together, put it together, have management in there, and they work on the business. And when someone's sick, they go and work in their businesses.
Yeah, that's great.
But generally they're, you know, but generally I'd say, look, at least 70% are still owned by one individual.
Great.
You know, who own the business.
Okay, so we've learned a lot today about what's happening in hospitality. Sales have held up. It's still a vibrant market. And, you know, it might seem surprising to some people that news agencies, there's a lot of action in that area as well. If you had 1 or 2 pieces of advice for someone thinking of buying either a hospitality business or a news agency, what would it be in terms of making a success of it?
I would look at a news agency, to be honest, any business, but I would look at particularly a news agency and say, what is it today? Go and talk to the association, say, what should it be tomorrow?
Yes.
Go and ask to see news agencies that are just, you know, kicking goals constantly. Go in there and see what they're doing and then compare that to the one you're looking to buy. There's some news agents out there who are just, you know, are doing a great job and they've grown their business, they've developed their business. Go and see those ones, see what it is. But that's like any business. I always say to someone, if you're looking to buy a business, don't be in a hurry. Don't make it an emotional thing. It's the same when you're looking to sell a business. Don't be in a hurry to sell your business. Think about it, plan it, exit plan it. If you know, when that fire starts to go out in the belly and you're looking to sell a business, it's time to say it's time to get out, because it takes 3 to 12 months to sell a business. It's not like selling a house. And it's the same for buying a business. Don't be in a hurry to buy the first business you come across. Look around, understand what type of business you want to buy. Look at the industry. And then when you walk into a business, have a look at that business, review it based on the criteria that you've set. If it doesn't meet the criteria, go, what could I do to make it fit that criteria? Or will it ever? For a lot of people, this is as big a buying as a house. Buying a business is a big acquisition. So take your time, get lots of advice, talk to accountants, talk to lawyers. Yes, the advice you're going to get from them is the negative, but that's their job, is to tell you all things that you should know that are bad. The good stuff you already know because you're excited. So I say to people, just take your time, go and see a lawyer, talk to a lawyer, go and see an accountant. It might cost you $500-600 to do that, but it might be the best money you've ever spent in your life.
You know, there's that expression, feel the fear and do it anyway. And I think that's maybe what, once you've done your due diligence, that's probably pretty good advice when it comes to buying it and also selling businesses.
I think well put, Ali. Very well put.
Well, thank you so much. I've learned so much about buying and selling hospitality and newspaper businesses. I don't think I'll be buying a hospitality business anytime soon because I'm not a night owl. But maybe a news agency in the future. You never know. So we love to hear from the audience. If you'd like to get in touch, please look for the contact details at the bottom of the podcast. That's all we have time for today on the Buy That Business podcast. Thanks so much, Matthew, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, Ali. Appreciate the time.